Have you ever stared at a chart that was so confusing it just gave you a headache? Yeah, we've all been there. Today, we're going to dive in and fix one of those data messes. We're going to take it step by step from total chaos to a crystal clear, really persuasive story. So, we're starting with this, a jumbled rainbow bar chart that honestly hides more than it shows. And our goal is to get here, a clean, focused visual that gives a super powerful recommendation. The big question is, how in the world do we make that leap? Well, that's exactly the journey we're going on today. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll figure out why the original chart just doesn't work. Then, we'll find the right visual for the job. After that, it's time for a masterclass in decluttering. Then, we'll build a compelling story, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with 6 key lessons you can use on your own. So let's start at the very beginning. Part 1, a chart that fails. Before we can fix anything, we have to understand its purpose. It's all about asking why we're even showing this data before we ever think about how. Okay, here it is again, our starting point. What are we even looking at? It's the average retail prices for 5 different products over time. But these random colors, they make it nearly impossible to follow any single product's journey. Your eyes are just darting all over the place, right? This visual isn't helping, it's actively hurting our ability to understand. And this is why context is absolutely everything. First, who are we talking to? The VP of product. Okay, what do they need? They need to understand competitor pricing to set a price for our new product. And how are we going to help? By showing the price trends for these 5 products. See, our goal isn't just to show data, it's to drive a decision. That's key. All right, with our purpose totally clear, it is time for step 2, choosing the right visual display. The form of our chart absolutely has to follow its function. Let's see how we can do a whole lot better. So, what's the first and easiest step? Let's just get rid of that distracting color. Just by making all the bars in neutral gray, our brain can stop trying to figure out what each color means and actually start focusing on the shapes and patterns in the data. It's an instant improvement. But we can still do better. So why is a DAR chart fundamentally the wrong choice for this data? Well, think about it. We're trying to show a continuous trend over time. Bar charts are awesome for comparing separate categories, but for time, they create these weird, chunky stair steps that totally break the flow. And here is the solution, a line graph. Suddenly, you can clearly trace each product's price journey over the years. We can see the ups, the downs, and how they all relate to each other. This is the right tool for this job, for sure. Okay, so now we have the right type of chart, but it's still pretty messy thanks to all the default settings. So it's time to roll up our sleeves and move on to our next principle, eliminating clutter. Let's get this thing cleaned up. Here's our decluttering checklist. We're going to remove the chart border and those grid lines. They're just visual noise. They don't add anything. We'll push the axes into the background by making them a lighter gray. We'll get rid of the default colors, and this one's a big one, we're going to label the lines directly so nobody has to hunt for a legend. And there we go. Look at that. It's the exact same data, but now it's a clean slate. It's calm, it's easy to read, and nothing is screaming for your attention. From this neutral base, now we can start to strategically guide our audience's focus. This is where the real magic happens. We're going to use something called pre-attentive attributes. It's a fancy term, but basically, it's visual stuff like color or size that our brains process in milliseconds before we even realize we're paying attention. By using them strategically, we can tell a story and direct our audience's eyes instantly. It's like a superpower. And this is the perfect example of that. On the left, we use color to tell one story, how the prices of the original products, A and B, started to drop after a new competitor, C, entered the market. But on the right, just by changing what's colored, we tell a totally different story. How new products tend to raise their prices after they launch. Same data, 2 very different stories. Now, before we tell our final story, we need to think like a designer for a second. That means adding clear access titles, average price and year, and making sure everything is aligned for a clean, professional look. See how the title is lined up with the top left? These small details signal quality and just make the whole thing easier to understand. All right, our visual is pretty much perfected. Now it's time for the final and honestly the most important step, telling a compelling story that leads directly to our recommendation. Let's see how it all comes together in the final presentation. Okay, so imagine we're in the room with the VP.
We start by setting the stage. We say, in the next couple of minutes, our goal is to understand the competitive pricing landscape to help us launch our own product. We're going to end with a specific price recommendation. It's clear, it's direct, and it sets expectations perfectly.
We start our story with the original players. So, back in 2008, products A and B entered the market at a pretty high price point, and for years they were priced similarly, with B always just a little bit cheaper than A. We're just establishing the initial state of the world.
Now we introduce the conflict. Then, new challengers, C, D, and E, entered the market at much lower prices, and they really disrupted the status quo. But notice this pattern. They all increased their prices right after their initial launch. This adds a really interesting layer to the story.
And here is our climax, the resolution. So, as of today, all the prices have started to converge around an average of about $223. Now, to be competitive, we recommend introducing our product below that average, somewhere in the $150 to $200 range. It's a clear, data-driven, and actionable recommendation. That is the payoff.
And that was the whole transformation. So now, let's just recap the entire process by boiling it down to a simple 6-lesson framework that you can use for any data story you need to tell. Here they are, the 6 lessons that powered this entire makeover. Number 1, understand the context. 2, choose the right chart. 3, eliminate all the clutter. 4, draw attention exactly where you want it. 5, think like a designer. And number 6, tell a compelling story. This is your playbook. Let's just look at it one last time, from the confusing before on the left to the persuasive after on the right. I mean, the transformation is dramatic. We didn't change the data at all. We just changed how we communicated it. We went from simply showing data to truly telling a story with it. This whole process turns data from a headache into an asset, a tool for persuasion and clarity. So the final question I'm going to leave you with is this: what story is your data waiting to tell?